Okay, well, we can get started and we'll do our introductions a little slow as people are still filtering into the session. But for those who are already here, my name is Julia McCotter. I am the marketing coordinator at the Alliance for Community Development, which organized this beautiful conference today in collaboration with Oakstop. So just before we get started on introducing these lovely panelists and our really interesting conversation, I just want to say to everyone who is in the session that we want this to be really interactive. So if you have questions, even as folks are talking, drop them in the session chat. Session chat is the one on the right rather than the event chat. So make sure it says session and it's highlighted at the top. So we will be, I will be monitoring the chat. So panelists, you don't have to worry about it. I will bring things up for you. But if you have questions or comments, or you want someone to dive a little deeper into something they were talking about, just write that in the chat and we can dive into it. This is really time for all of us, not just the people on stage. So with that, I think we will get started on introductions. I am joined today by the incredible Alfredo Matthew from Working World, LLC, with Natalia Carrasco from Pacific Community Ventures, and Stephen Bediako from Turning Basin Labs. So we will have each of you just go around and give a brief introduction about your work and how you got into the space at the intersection of, entrepreneurship and quality jobs. So let's start with, I'll do it clockwise by my screen's order. Natalia, and then Alfredo, and then Stephen, if that's all right. Go ahead.
Perfect. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for organizing and for being our moderator today, Julia. Very excited to be here. My name is Natalia Carrasco. I'm the Director of Business Advising at Pacific Community Ventures. My work has always been in the intersection of business, tech, and social good, and how to use business as a force for social good. So I really found my home at Pacific Community Ventures, where we empower small business owners so they can grow their businesses and create quality jobs, and they utilize that to transform their communities. We do that through a combination of entrepreneur-friendly fair loans through our lending program as a CDFI in California, through our field building impact investment and research and consulting firm, and through the business advising program that I lead, where we match small business owners with pro bono business advisors. Really happy to be here and discuss how all of our three programs come together to support and create quality jobs.
Great. So my name is Alfredo Matthew. I'm the founder of Working World LLC, a small business consultancy that really works at the intersection of education, workforce, and entrepreneurship. I also am a founding partner in Eastside Oakland Ventures, which is a new business incubator that's starting in East Oakland, Deep East Oakland, working with 37 early stage entrepreneurs and helping them launch and grow their businesses. How I got into this is I was in education for about 20 years, taught in the South Bronx, taught in East Oakland, and I thought college was the answer. Get every, education, that's the pathway. And I just saw so many students not persist, not graduate. So in 2014, I started focusing on career readiness because I thought careers are the answer and entrepreneurship is the answer. And so for 5 years, I was a director of NIFTY, the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship here in the Bay Area and in California. And it was just all about business plan competitions and entrepreneurial mindset and exposing young people to Silicon Valley and partnered with Salesforce and PayPal and all these great companies. And then I recognized that our students didn't really have access to Silicon Valley. PayPal and Salesforce are not hiring from East San Jose, from East Oakland, from San Francisco. And in terms of helping young people start businesses, we don't have the access to that early stage investment fund capital. We don't have the business incubators. Accelerators are not set up for communities, that don't have access to that Silicon Valley funnel. And so really started focusing on how do we prototype and create ecosystems for where people are in East San Jose, in East Oakland, in Richmond, in Hayward, because that's where, that's where the communities are, that's where the businesses need to be built. And so that's what I'm really excited about talking about today. You're up, Steve.
Great. And yeah, thank you, Alfredo. My name's Stephen Bediako. So I'm the founder, managing director of Turning Basin Labs. And we are a cooperative staffing agency that helps to put contractors to work in California. We focus on putting people into roles in technology, research, and manufacturing. But what we also do is ensure that our contractors get access to benefits, supports, career support, and we also give them ownership in our agency. So once they've done 100 hours as a contractor in a year, they then begin to kind of own and can share profits with us. And so, yeah, we're new, just getting going. We're collaborating with Alfredo. It's great to see him on here and great to be connected to Natalia. And yeah, again, like everyone else, super pleased to be here and glad that Julia and the team are making this event happen. And yeah, you can probably hear I've got a British accent, so I'm a transplant. Don't hold that against me. Been here for the last 3-4 years working on this stuff. And yeah, my background is back in the UK. I worked in business. I was a social entrepreneur. I built multiple businesses that were designing programs, helping to measure the impact of them, and also supporting issues around youth entrepreneurship and whatnot. So yeah, I come to this discussion today really from a perspective very similar to Alfredo, actually, which is that, just trying to get people into these companies is not working for everyone. And we also need to be thinking about we're creating ownership for people and for our workers. So yeah, excited to be part of the conversation.
Beautiful. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. You did it way better than I ever could have. So thanks for taking ownership of that. Now I think our audience can see why I'm so excited for this conversation. We have just some really interesting different facets of the employment space represented here. And so I think we're really going to be able to dive into kind of looking at things holistically. So the first question that I wanted to pose to the three of you is really about kind of firstly just defining what it is that we're really talking about here when we talk about quality jobs. So in just a handful of sentences, what would you each define as a dignified workplace, a holistic workplace, or a quality job? Like, what does that really look like to you? And then we can use that to frame the conversation for how do we get there? How do we get everyone there? So we can popcorn style this. Whoever wants to go first, go ahead. And yeah, let's go.
I can get us started because we've actually spent a lot of time thinking and researching this question at PCV. We have one of our 3 arms is a research and consulting firm where we participate in of an initiative called Reimagine Retail a few years ago, where we partnered with the Aspen Institute, and we went on some deep research about what does it mean to offer a quality job? What are the components? So all of that work resulted in what we now have that we call our Good Jobs, Good Business Toolkit. I'll tell you more about it in a minute, but we came to our definition after a lot of research, a lot of work, and we came up with this 5 dimensions. We said this in a sense that we think it's different for different industries and different sizes of businesses. So I think it's important to understand that there's levels and there's dimensions, and it's not a binary situation. So it's important to keep that into account. So you can't ask a small business to have the same thresholds as you would ask an SP 500 company. But yeah, we came up with 5 main dimensions, and within the dimensions we have specific qualifications for each, and you can see more on our website. But the 5 dimensions are offering a living wage, offering basic benefits, offering career building opportunities, offering wealth building opportunities. And again, this looks different for different types of businesses and size of businesses. And finally, offering a fair and engaging workplace. So I would love to dive more into that, but we always talk about how different dimensions and levels of moving towards a quality job, but always within this framework of those 5 dimensions.
Thank you, Natalia.
I'll jump in. So, yeah, I mean, look, great question, and I think like this is just like the battle of our time, right? You know, I think we've got a real problem with just not enough quality jobs and quality work out there, and you know, when you follow the breadcrumb trail, for me, it's all about capital and like you know the kind of incentives, the bad incentives that capital and investment is creating in our companies to basically not value the people that they employ. You know, we're actually doing some work with Jobs for the Future, which is kind of trying to look at this question and say like, you know, can you influence that flow of capital by kind of looking at things from a lens of what is good for workers and a worker-centric lens to make. And there's kind of three elements in there for us, which is very similar to the great work that Natalia is doing. So one, you know, can you make sure that there is worker voice, right? A perspective, their view, valued, you know, in the organization. You know, in Germany, most of the big companies have workers on their board, you know, recognized like any other shareholder. Second is, you know, it's just, for me, I think it's just unbelievable that, you know, we have so many people who are in jobs where there is no route to career progression.
Yes.
No route to be able to climb the ladder and be recognized. You know, all these platform models that are just keeping people stuck in particular roles are just not right. And then the third bit for me is just the quality of the job, right? Like people should be getting paid a fair rate, and you know, they, where possible, at least they should be getting the benefits and the supports that come with that, you know. So yeah, you know, it's kind of worker voice, you know, opportunity for career progression, and getting the right pay and the right benefits. And actually, I think when you breadcrumb trail, you know, it's about how we influence capital to make sure that, you know, we are supporting and creating and growing businesses that treat their labor right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like that. I like what both of my colleagues here have said. And I think about this conversation of the future of work all the time. And that future of work conversation is really coming from the perspective of big employers. And as Stephen kind of mentioned, like, how do we have a worker perspective on this, but not even just a worker and owner perspective on this, right? Because our labor, that's the most valuable thing that we have. And so when I think about what dignified work is, there has to be opportunities to grow and learn, right? The work that I could do 10 years ago is not the work that I can do today. It's not the work that I'm going to be able to do 10 years from now. I'm an entrepreneur. My growth is dependent on my own learning and the relationships that I build. So that has to be there. And rather than just a living wage, how do we make a quality job about wealth building, right? Because if you're never going to get rich in a job, but if you have assets, if you have wealth building, you're going to have, right, you and your family's well-being is going to be taken care of over the long term. And I think creativity has to be a part of quality work, right? Like, so many of the low wage jobs that we have are just not creative, and there's no skill acquisition, right? You can't really bring yourself into the work, and that's the challenge. And right now, like living under pandemic living, a quality job is flexibility, so you can have a balanced life. Everyone who's at home right now working from home, right? I got kids in the other room. I'm juggling and balancing and figuring it out. But if I had to go to, you know, FedEx, and if I had to be, you know, taking the packages off the planes, and, you know, all of that essential work that is allowing us to have food and for society to run, how do you take care of your kids? How do you have that balance? And so there's so many things that go into a quality job, but I keep going back to this idea of being entrepreneurial, being able to work for yourself without being that gig worker that's really just a low paid essential worker, without the flexibility, without the growth, without the without the wealth building. Those are the things I think about.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you all for answering that question and giving kind of like the baseline perspective that each of you are coming from in your own work practice. In my history, I've worked in workforce development. The previous nonprofit I was at, the professional development training for low-income folks in the Bay Area. And so, that's a perspective I take often into the work that the Alliance does with entrepreneurs, that, there's really a spectrum of growth. And I love that you brought that in, Alfredo, that, really, and I think all of you touched on this, it's important for our brains to be challenged, for us to feel like we have a path forward and that we're not going to come into work, in 10 years and it's going to look exactly the same as it does tomorrow. And I think there's an optimism perspective that comes in there too, like we want everyone in our communities to feel optimistic about the future. So I see we have an audience question already that I want to incorporate kind of into the next section that we were already going to go into, which is talking about how the landscape of quality jobs has changed since the pandemic started, which I know, Alfredo, you just touched on a little bit. So I'd love to hear from folks kind of how the pandemic has affected the folks that you work with in the different areas of employment that you work with. And also, how do you see different types of work, which were kind of on the rise already, such as freelancing, gig work, contract work? How do you see those types of work kind of shifting in the landscape as well as the pandemic hits, and we find that maybe some people who were freelancing are actually in a better position than people who were W-2 employees but required going into a brick and mortar location every day. So very interested to hear folks' perspectives. We'll popcorn it again, and feel free to add on to each other if you feel inspired.
I'll kick it off this time, and I'll say how is the landscape changing? I'm going to talk from my own business's perspective, right? When COVID hit, I lost all my business. I had no income for 2 months. And if I don't have any income, I can't pay anyone else. And so I recognize that every time a small business dies, it's not just the business owner that goes under, it's all of that satellite of the other, workers and the services. Like, you lose so much when a small business goes under.
Even the vendors, sorry to interrupt, but even their vendors are
it's like the whole ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
Like, if the tiger dies, right, then everyone else in the food chain. And that is what is so scary about this moment, is that we're like, ecosystems are like falling apart because they're not resilient. But what I'm also seeing is new ecosystems are building up, right? Because my business did this, and now it's the V curve going back up. And as I'm getting more clients and more business, I am identifying other independent contractors, other entrepreneurs, and we are supporting each other. We're feeding each other business. And so now, why I'm in conversations with Turning Basin Labs, with the work Steven's doing, is I now have like 9 different independent contractors that I am subcontracting with. And we are, they're doing marketing, they're doing grant writing, they're doing, community management and business instructors. And people want that flexibility. I am one client that they're working with that maybe they're getting 40% of their income, but then they have, 4 or 5 different income streams. And a lot of the entrepreneurs that I'm working with, they've got 3 or 4 different income streams. And I think that might be something that happens more in the future. And I see someone in the chat is asking, where do you see freelancing in the future of work going? I would much rather have 4 or 5 different income streams than to rely on one employer. Because when that airline, because I have neighbors who work for the airlines, they're still out of work 7 months later, waiting for that federal stimulus that isn't going to come. And now, what are they going to do? But I see a lot of people who, they have multiple clients, multiple hustles, multiple streams of income. And as long as they are growing and they're gaining skills, they're getting better wages, they're getting larger contracts. And if we can find a way to take away the risk that comes from being an entrepreneur, which is basically healthcare, right? Like, if you can provide people healthcare, if you can provide people some of those just standard benefits that you get from employment, I think many more people would choose that lifestyle than working for one employee from one employer and having, basically very limited about what you can earn and what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a huge opportunity to really support and educate freelancers to know what to expect and what to ask for from their different employers and contractors, because they have to know that they need to avoid they need to actually be freelancers and not be employees just disguised as freelancers. For example, freelancers, you need to know that, you can't have an employee ask you to have all of your time reserved for them, but only they get to pay you for a couple of the hours, little things like that. And I think it's important for all of this education around rights and expectations to go out there for all of our freelancing community, so that organizations not take advantage, if you will, of that. But I completely agree on the fact that, getting 5 different income streams is great, as long as it's from actual freelance work and not just full-time jobs in disguise as a freelance gig.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think it's a big question, and I agree with Alfredo and Natalia on their sentiments, and and it's also really complicated, right? So I think just in terms of some of the stuff that we've seen through our work, there's obviously more contract work occurring. There's less certainty around some of that. I think some of the stuff that we've seen is that this distinction between W-2 and 1099 is increasingly becoming not relevant, right? Because actually people can be in full-time W-2 roles, but they're low paid, they're not getting enough benefits and support, and they're having to do 1099 work to top that up. Or people are doing lots of 1099 work. Sometimes it's with one organization, and then obviously AB5 is getting in the mix, or they're doing it with multiple. And again, they're still maybe not earning enough to kind of have a good quality of living and pay for benefits. So, the whole thing is becoming quite complicated. And my view on it really is that, and speaking about this, really from a California perspective, is I think if I'm being brutally honest, we just cannot rely on the market and on businesses and employers to be generous about providing the right things. We actually need policy and something to step in. And I don't have the answers, but what I do know is that we should be driven by values, right? And so for me, those values should be, whether you're W-2 or whether you're 1099, if you are doing significant work for people, they should be making a fair contribution to a set of additional benefits to support you in your work, So, we are trying to get there. We are working with 1099 contractors, and what we're trying to do is build enough scale that we can offer our contractors real benefits, right? I mean, Alfredo hit it on the head. The first one is really health. We're trying to get to a point where obviously people are talking about portable benefits and all of these kind of questions, but I think we need to be driven by our values, and those values really, for me, go back to, we should be paying people a fair amount. The previous points as well, we need to be giving more ownership to people who are working on stuff. I'll just call it, Uber could have been set up in a way where actually some of that profit could be shared with all the drivers, right? But it wasn't set up in that way. It was set up in a way that it's a small set of people, right? And so that was a choice that was made. But we can make another choice, right? We can start businesses that do have shared ownership. So I think it's complicated. It's obviously a lot is going on. It's reactive, and actually, it really is a time for us to be what are the values that are important to us? And for me, I think we need to be valuing our labor.
If I could compliment what Steven says, I definitely agree that we should be value driven, and that's what we all do the work that we're doing, right? But I will also like to talk a little bit about the Good Jobs, Good Business model and toolkit that we put together, because our research has shown that providing quality jobs is not just the value aligned or right thing to do, but it's actually good for business. So if you, for example, are a retail shop and are able to keep an employee engaged and motivated, your sales are going to reflect that. And it's actually proof that you can see on our website that shows that having to recruit and retrain a retail employer has some real tangible costs that your company is going to have to go into. Whereas if you keep employees interested, motivated, trained with a career perspective, your sales do better and your bottom line in the end also does better. So there is a business case for offering quality jobs. And that's what we were trying to do with this toolkit, where we said, okay, quality jobs is not just the nice thing to do or something that big companies can do. Let's come through and figure out what does that mean for small business owners? How can you as a small brick and mortar shop or a mom and pop shop actually start thinking about what that means? So we've broken down into really specifics down to like, do you offer folks their schedules 2 weeks in advance so they can plan their lives accordingly? Are you offering direct deposit to pay for the check, to pay for their salary so they don't have to spend money on those cashing check places? Little things like that are like, oh, I can do that, because many times our small business owners think that, oh, quality jobs, yeah, I'll do that when we're doing great as a business. I want to do good by my employees and I'll do the right thing, but at first I need to get my head above water, and that'll be a future thing. Really great, and we're super profitable. And what we're trying to show is that no, this is something that you can start implementing in your day-to-day activities. It's not all going to cost you money. People think it's only like, oh, I need to pay people a lot more money. Yes, you need to pay folks a living wage, but there's a lot of things that you can do to make your workplace more engaging, that you can start motivating your employees. And one of the things that we're trying to do at PCV is going back to the question of how are things changing since COVID, is saying, look, we're mourning the loss of thousands of jobs, but hopefully we're coming together and we're rebounding. And how might we rebuild this whole system in a way that includes quality jobs from the get-go? You know, you set up your new employees and you're taking these good jobs and quality jobs concepts at the beginning of your onboarding, of your recruiting, of your setting up your business. And yeah, we've shown that it really pays off and contributes to the bottom line too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love all the different perspectives of hitting it from all the kind of different angles of this issue, right? I'm so happy that we have Natalia here to talk about, small business employers, and Stephen here to talk about, placing people in contract work, and Alfredo talking about developing entrepreneurs and developing talent pipelines. And I want to dive a little deeper into that, into the different kind of perspectives that you all bring. Because I think something that we've just kind of gently touched on a couple of times here is that we really have shared interests and shared values all across the employment spectrum at all of the different levels of power that we can find there. So I want to shift to talking a little bit about like, how can we and we as anyone along this space, whether it's a small business owner or an entrepreneur or a freelancer or a person working a traditional W-2 job, how can we be connecting better over our shared values to advocate for workplaces that work for all of us? Because, just as Natalia was just saying, there's a business case for employee retention for high quality jobs. And Stephen coming in with kind of the cooperative model approach, which is, there is a very big business case for shared employee ownership. How can folks who are kind of working at different levels and in those different elements be kind of partnering a little bit better or connecting a little bit better over those shared values? How can we be working together better?
I'm happy to jump in so that we follow the changing popcorn order. I think about this stuff really from the system perspective. Obviously with Turning Base Labs, we are trying to contribute in one way to that system change by saying, look, here's a model of a progressive staffing agency that is cooperatively owned so that contractors can have a permanent home from home while going about doing contract work, and that's like our contribution. But I think with your question, for me, I look at the system and I look at it from the perspective of kind of, both obviously working here in California for the last years, but also, growing up and working in the UK, where it's a very similar economic model and a very similar approach to how we treat capital and labor and productivity. And I just think that, at least from the perspective of California, from what I've seen, there's lots of work that goes on around kind of like worker protection, supporting workers, kind of fighting for the rights and all that kind of stuff. That is good work, important work. That is part of creating system change. A lot of work goes on around changing business, right? And trying to get businesses, like Natalia was saying, to realize that, paying people fairly and employing people properly is not only a good thing to do morally, but it's good for business, right? And, that's also an important battle. And obviously there's a battle around, how you change policy and influence policy and change government. But I come back to my previous point, which is that I don't think there is enough of a battle and enough partnership and work going on to influence the flow of capital. Mm-hmm. Right? We are allowing capital to flow and I think build businesses that are not good for us as humans. And then we're trying to find ways to, fix that problem, right? Through different routes. When actually what we should also be doing is saying, well, how do we get more ethical capital flowing into this system, flowing into the entrepreneurs that Alfredo is supporting, flowing into the small businesses, flowing into programming and content. So when that capital flows, it flows with good expectations and accountability about how those organizations should grow and develop, right? Yeah. I just think there's people doing good work on that stuff, but I just think there could be so much more, and that actually, thinking about how we collaborate across those different platforms of supporting workers, changing business, changing policy, as well as influencing capital is how we're going to kind of, move the needle on this. And the time is now, right? COVID-19 has exposed, it set it out, and the time is now to do that. That would be my bit.
Yeah. I think an interesting thing that is happening on that side, especially on the consumer side, like more on the B2B than B2C than B2B side, will be that consumers are starting to use their values and morals to inform their choices when they purchase products. That we're starting to see trends like people foregoing luxury brands and going more for like, oh, is this Fairtrade certified and things like that, which is it's little and small and it's slow, but we have started seeing that pattern. I think like brands like Patagonia get increased business because people are using their values to inform their team. Things like companies getting B Corp certification to say, oh, there's a lot of layers that go into that. And I don't know if you ever gone through the process of getting a B certification or just glance through the questionnaire. It takes hours and hours just to read the application, right? And there's a whole component on quality jobs and dignified jobs. So I think consumers can also drive the funders into caring about that, because if we realize that all of us as consumers are taking this into account, we're making our purchases, then the most profitable areas to invest in are going to be the ones that are tied to quality jobs and just value-driven business practices. So I think there's that component, but that's not the case for example, B2B.
So around this question of how do we work together, right? First of all, Pacific Community Ventures, Turning Basin Labs, like we should all definitely be working together. And there are so many pieces of this ecosystem that are siloed that if the CDFIs worked with the entrepreneurial training providers, worked with city government, worked with the Oakland Workforce Development Board, worked with the CBOs like the Black Cultural Zone, work with the funders like the San Francisco Foundation and the Irvine Foundation. And I mean, like we have all the components. We're like a resource-rich environment but we don't get the job done because folks are really struggling. They don't have access to employment. There are too many barriers to start a business in California. And so we have all the resources, but we're not doing a great job, right? And so it's really, we got to strengthen the ecosystem. And if we're going to create more quality, dignified jobs in the Bay Area, I, for one, am looking less to Silicon Valley as the model and thinking more about how do we change who gets to start businesses and, who are the business owners. So it's like, I was working for a long time on the career pathways into Silicon Valley, and I recognized, well, if they don't have the 4-year degree, if they don't have the data scientist degree, they're not going to get access to those jobs. Well, then how do we create our own jobs? And so with Eastside Oakland Ventures, we're working with 37 early stage entrepreneurs. When we say early stage, what do we mean? 82% are Black owned businesses, 18% are Latino, and 70% of them have less than $5K in revenue. They want to start a business. They're selling it side hustle. They don't have a business license. They don't have these things in place. But if they could get the business license, if they can get their accounting set up, if they can get their digital marketing set up, if they can move from making their wine in their kitchen to a commercial kitchen, right? And be able to start vending at places, they can go from 5K in revenue to 25K, from 25K to 50K, from 50K to 100K. And once they get into that 100K range, then there's tons of resources and opportunities. They can go to ICA, they can go here, they can go there. All of the entrepreneurs I'm working with, some are making like $80,000 in revenue, but only $20,000 in profit after 4 years of being in business. How long can you keep doing that? I mean, like they're making less than $10 an hour if you actually put all the time, into it. And it's because they're doing it by themselves. They don't have bookkeeping support. They don't have, marketing support. And so what we're doing is we're creating basically like, we have 4 weekly check-ins a week, right? Myself and the other community managers, Sahayu, Acacio, we're just checking in with folks. What do you need? And the resources are often right there in the community. There's 10 entrepreneurs on the call. I need help with this. Someone was sharing, I'm a food business. My whole model has changed. How do I begin? I don't know. Put it out. People have great ideas. People are just sharing things. So it's like psychological support, but then it is actually removing the barriers, which is navigating business licenses, navigating permits with the city on opening up brick and mortar locations. Folks don't have the resources to navigating permitting in the city of Oakland. And the big one, as Steven says, is access to early stage capital. That 5K to 50K investment, where if you don't have good credit, if you're formerly incarcerated, if you're undocumented, you can't get an SBA loan. So, and you can't get an SBA loan if you don't have your financial projections for 12 months and you don't have good accounting books. So where do you get that early stage investment capital? And right now, all of the funding that I'm seeing is for existing businesses, is for businesses trying to keep their doors open under COVID. Where is that funding for that next generation of businesses? Those small businesses, I know multiple people who lost their job and are now starting businesses. We need to invest in them because they're creating their own jobs. They're not looking to get jobs at the places that laid them off. They want to create their own jobs, and they're amazing entrepreneurs, amazing stories. But psychological support and free entrepreneurial classes and, some workshops, that's not enough. They need funding to get off the ground to profitability.
I would just add on Alfredo's last point there. It's so important, I would just call it out. I've noticed that trend of funders and investors are like, oh, it's a bit risky at this time, just going to stay investing with people that we know or people that are big. But it's like, people, come on. History shows you that it's during recessions and moments like this, that is when, people do lose jobs and lose opportunities, but that is when new things are born and new things are coming. And like doing, it needs to be capitalized because those entrepreneurs are the future businesses of tomorrow. And actually, if you really capitalize and focus on that, you will then get some more balanced economy to California and to the Bay Area, right? Which at the minute is too heavy on technology. You know, that's the potential.
And I would say to that point, these entrepreneurs want to start businesses along the McCotter corridor in East Oakland between the Eastmont Mall and Castlemont High School. Most of them live in District 6. They want to start businesses and services for their community. And imagine if folks from the community can create businesses that can create jobs for the community. So much money, like if you live in East Oakland, you're going to go shopping in San Leandro, Castro Valley, or you're going to go to Montclair, right? There are not the options to spend money in your community. And so that circular economy needs to get going, because that's how we're going to build back stronger. If the money is all going elsewhere, how's the tax revenue ever going to get built up? How are the schools ever going to get better? How are, you know, the services ever going to get better unless people are spending money where they live?
If I may, I would love to add on to what Alfredo said around building ecosystems. I think that is so important in that we're very lucky that, for example, in California, in the Bay Area, there are so many resources that what there's not is the information about them and a way to access them. So when you build an ecosystem, you're just building just methods to systematically get the help and the resources together. So I would love to talk to you a little bit about the small business support circle that, as a result of COVID, we've launched with Pacific Community Ventures. Alfredo and I were talking about, like, we should definitely meet after this call to discuss it, because we love to welcome as part of the circle. And what we've done really is we've just grouped together organizations, corporate funders, foundation, everyone who's invested in the success and resilience of small business owners and their communities. So all of us can build on each other's what we have to bring to the table so we can propel each other's missions. So I love to share an example from our work so far for that I think illustrates it. We have built a network of referral partners who said, I'm working, like Alfredo, your organization is a perfect example. You're working with early stage entrepreneurs, you're offering them all sorts of support, and that is fantastic. But like you said, it's not always enough. They're always going to need other things, like they're going to need help with digital marketing, or they're going to need help getting ready to access capital, etc. So the idea of us coming together is that we're using our business advising program to come in and complement what you may be doing already, and say, hey, if you need someone to help them get QuickBooks set up, we're your people. So we're just joining forces. So for example, now we're starting working with JVS, who's training folks on QuickBooks, and they're going to come in and give free QuickBooks services to our people within our support circle. And with another one of our support circle members, Ibalsi, they said, hey, we have a bunch of really hardworking monolingual Cantonese speakers, entrepreneurs. They need help. Can you match them with advisors too? And I said, well, look, we, in our portfolio of volunteer advisors, we have 1,600 folks, and across all of them, they speak 50 languages, and they're happy. We have a bunch of Cantonese speaking advisors that, you know, are consultants, are business people that want to support small business owners, and they're happy to provide mentoring in Cantonese. But my platform is not designed to accommodate Cantonese yet, so that's been my barrier. I said, well, I have translators because we work with monolingual Cantonese speakers all the time. Said about, oh, fantastic. Now we're collaborating, and they're providing the translation so that we can do the onboarding and the matching. And then we're taking advantage of the Cantonese speaking advisors we have to serve those monolingual Cantonese speaker business owners in Chinatown in Oakland. So it's just one example of like how coming together and then building a system through which to work together in a scalable way can go so far.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and sorry, go ahead, Alfredo.
I just wanted to share that JVS program. Stephen turned me on to it, and I'm talking with Stephen and JVS about those bookkeeping services.
Oh, there we go.
There's complete alignment, and in the work that we're doing, like, you know, I knew Gino at United Roots, so connected with him for the, you know, we have about 8 entrepreneurs who are under 24. So that's who we're partnering for, like a youth track.
Nice.
Working with Brett Sweet, the Renaissance Entrepreneurship Center, for some free classes through there. Talking with ICA because they have a new early stage accelerator that they're starting in 2021, and we're trying to figure out how we can be a pipeline to that accelerator. And now, Natalia, that we are connected, like,
yes,
we got to figure out like a business advising strategy, because
absolutely.
we don't want to build all of this stuff. We just want to bring that resource and that network to our community and make sure that our folks get access to what they need when they need it. And we're like, we're the middle people, like doing the handoffs.
Yes, because the equation of all the different needs that an entrepreneur makes is long and it's ever changing, and no single organization can provide all the different variables of support, but we can come together and then we can approach that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love seeing all of these connections made, because it reminds me of, it's essentially a shift to the exact opposite of like a competitive landscape. I think it's easy, even when you're working in nonprofit or in business services, even when you're working primarily to support your community, it's still, we're so ingrained with a capitalist mindset of, like, well, if I can do it better, then I can outcompete you. And, I don't need to partner with you. I need to outcompete you. Right. But we find, and, this is a ton of the work that the Alliance does in creating ecosystem partnerships, is that everybody succeeds more when we're working together. And in fact, partnering with other organizations to lift capacity where some of us don't have it only serves to improve our communities more. So, for example, the Alliance, our flagship program is our navigation program. It's a free program for any Bay Area entrepreneurs. They meet one-on-one with our Alliance navigators, and they talk through where they're at with their business, from ideation all the way to, business for 10 years, whatever, and talk about kind of where the gaps in their resources are. And then the Alliance connects them to people in the ecosystem who can help, whether that's for mentorship, whether that's connecting them to PCV and saying, you need an actual business advisor, and here's where you can get one for free. And we've just found through doing that work that, a lot of it is like, when we get to act as the room and then bring people in to that room, that's where all the connections are made. It's really just about making sure that everyone is in communication in the ecosystem. And that's what's so important about doing events like this, about having, our membership bodies, and about just connecting people when we see those opportunities, So I just want to plug in a call to action for, folks that are watching and folks on the panel, that, we can all be doing a better job of anytime we see some opportunity to connect folks, just making the connection. It's very easy to do. You can do it wherever you are along the ecosystem, whether you're just a community member who has a friend who has a business and then came to an event and know about the work that someone is doing, or, if you're someone like me who's, working in the ecosystem, it's one of the easiest things we can do to help out our community members and to make sure that our ecosystem is staying afloat efficiently, right? So yeah, I love to see those connections being made and those examples of how, we can uplift each other's work. So we are coming down to the end of our time, but I want to give everyone an opportunity to talk about other action items that you see, or, gaps that you see in the ecosystem that you're really hoping folks are going to step into to fill. We really want all of our conversations today to impart everyone with actionable takeaways and inspiration for how they can kind of incorporate the ideals that we all share, the values that we all share into, their work and their existence in the community. So yeah, if there's anything that each of you think you could be getting more from community members, or if you wish that there were other resources or tools that were being amplified more, I would love to hear them.
I'll just go. I think for me, just this point of collaborating rather than competing is it's just fundamental, kind of. I've worked here for the last 3-4 years, but before that, I spent like 10, 11 years working in the UK kind of social public good space. And yeah, there are similar patterns in there where it is a kind of, a fight for the pie and, kind of who can do what. Whereas actually what we should be doing is coming together. We should be coming together like a jigsaw, right? And saying, we've got all these different pieces and all these different capabilities. Can we fund that and support that as an ecosystem and build it up, So, and maybe we can't really wait for, and when I say we, I mean like those that are providing services or delivering services or doing interventions. I think obviously you want funders to support it, but I think we've just also got to make it happen, and kind of turn up and present. So just off the back of this conversation, I can see how, all three of us could like work together and collaborate. And I would love to explore that and make that happen. And, and if we do that and we can add in, other people, whether it's on the chat or whoever, and you just turn up with these like, I used to call it back in the UK, we used to call it, create a collaboration that makes it, impossible to refuse.
Yeah.
Like when you create that kind of collaboration that makes it impossible to say no, then all of a sudden, you can draw down resources, make stuff happen. You're not working in silo. You're not getting into the zone of like, how do I keep the lights on for my organization? You're in the zone of like, wow, all of us are doing this together in lockstep. And we've got to try and do more of that. There's lots of it happening, but, we can always do more.
I really appreciate your approach of collaboration, Stephen. And I really appreciate your asking for calls to action, Julia. I love calls to action. So I'll frame it in that sense. I want to say if you're a small business owner watching in, my call to action would be to look for help, ask for help. You're not alone. There's whole ecosystems of organizations here invested in your success, looking to help you. So the other action item for small business owners, I would say visit. I put a link to our Good Jobs, Good Business toolkit, so that you can start exploring ways to incorporate quality jobs from the beginning. You don't need to even do anything right now, but just keep it in the back of your mind. What does that look like when you start hiring again? And know that we're here to help. We have volunteer advisors that are specialized actually in quality jobs that we can pair you with, that we're happy to provide, always for free, always pro bono. So just start thinking about adding that ingredient into your equation when it comes to running your business in general, because like we were saying, it's not just the right thing to do, but it's good for your business. For business professionals in general, my action item will be to volunteer your time. Everything that you're doing is valuable to someone else, and we have made it our job to find who that someone else is. So go into Pacific Community Ventures and let us know what you do, and we'll find someone that you could help. If you're a nonprofit organization working with small business owners, please reach out to us. We'd love to welcome into our small business support circle so we can work on those ecosystems we're discussing and just propel each other's mission and impact. And finally, if we have funders on the call, if you talk to funders, here's for funders, I would highly encourage them to invest in CDFIs because they're the ones offering that capital to all the folks that we were commenting about, immigrants, folks that SBA will turn away. That's what CDFIs are better equipped to do. So give CDFIs the funds so that we can grow the impact of those dollars. So I think that would be my calls to actions. Thank you so much for the time, by the way.
Those are great call to actions. I echo, we need early stage investment funds for entrepreneurs. I think that's the biggest gap that we have out there. And I like CDFIs, but we also need new innovative models that make it easier for entrepreneurs to access capital. But my last point, because I think you were just saying, like, what else do we need to be thinking about? My background is education, and we got to be thinking about the education pipeline to create people ready to get into the workforce and to build entrepreneurs. And for me, the biggest gap that we have in California are our community colleges, and making our community colleges really effective and really aligned both to like the workforce demands, but to churning out entrepreneurs. Because if we're talking about creating a new generation of business owners, the community colleges are the best institutions we have to do that. And so ESO Ventures, we're partnered with Merritt College. This came out of, Merritt College and Councilmember Lauren Taylor saying they wanted to invest and create an entrepreneurial pipeline in East Oakland. And there's a lot of other community colleges that I'm talking with who want to create community-driven business incubators. And they're the ones that if they got faster, if they got, more adaptive to the real economic opportunities out there, they could really help prepare that future workforce. And so another initiative I'm working on is Fab City that Stephen is connected with Danny Beasley, which is about all the fab labs and in fabrication manufacturing, which is really partnered with Peralta Community Colleges. And if you can combine those fab labs at the community colleges with entrepreneurship, I think that's another great manufacturing story that we could be telling about creating quality jobs.
Beautiful. Thank you all so much for your calls to action. Thank you just for sitting on this panel and chatting about the workplace with me. It is always a pleasure to geek out over our work and see where those consistencies and where those gaps are. Feel free to continue, folks, dropping resources in the chat. That is very useful, and we'll use them in our summaries of the event after the conference concludes. So just a little bit of housekeeping for everyone. We are about to go into our lunch break. What you can do during your lunch break, aside from step away from your computer, do a stretch, hydrate, and eat some lunch, is we have speed networking sessions. So if you look on the left side of your screen, you'll see networking. It's right below sessions. And those are 7 to 15-minute sessions. You'll be just randomly paired with another person from the conference. And that's a great opportunity to connect with other folks in the ecosystem, to chat about the talks that you just watched or participated in. And there is an opportunity to exchange contact information in that. You just press contact, I think, and it will only give the other person your contact info if they also agreed to that. So it's kind of a double layered thing. Also, please go ahead and explore our expo booths. Those are below the networking session on the left side. That's where you can find resources. If you're a business, you can explore some of the local small businesses that we're highlighting today. And you can also get more information about the organizations that funded this event. So please do check it out. There's a lot of really cool stuff there, and a couple of good friends are showing their businesses. So of course I want everyone to check out their booths. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to Natalia, Stephen, and Alfredo, and thank you to everyone who's active in the chat today. I hope to see you in other sessions. I hope to see you in the event chat, and I'm really looking forward to following everyone's work going forward. Natalia said it greatly right before we started. Hopefully in a year we can come back to this event and the three of you will be able to highlight the work that you start doing together now as a great case study for collaboration. So that's the hope that I'm leaving this panel with.
Love it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great lunch break, and we'll catch you in the afternoon.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Take it easy.